All right, Kyle Mohan Racing. The Formula Drift season is over. It's a wrap. We are getting ready to tear the Mazda RX8 down. We're also working on some other videos and trying to catch up around the shop. So really appreciate everybody who's been watching the channel. We're actually over 11,000 subscribers now. Keeping rotaries alive, dropping rotary knowledge, talking about our race program, and always happy to answer questions. And I know one of the first questions people are going to ask, how's the hybrid rotary setup, which is our multi-port Renesas RX7 combination. And it's great. I got a video coming up really soon on that, but I wanted to discuss a little bit about our Formula Drift car, the 2023 package, how we kept it reliable through the season, some of the issues we had, some of the things we're going to work on, and just a little review or overview before we tear the car down. And if anybody wants us to work on specific topics, I think I've got a request for our how we run ethanol and what we think about it. So that's going to be an upcoming video. And I think we got a request in regards in the wastegate turbo area and why we have that set up the way we have it. So upcoming videos along with some of our other topics, but we'll do a quick walk around. Again, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching the channel. Check out the website. We got some KMR merch. And always visit Mazda Tricks or KMR for any of your rotary needs. So Formula Drift-wise, we ran all 8 rounds with the car. We had only one big crash right at the beginning of the season, and although the car was hurt, luckily the drivetrain and engine side was not. So basically, from the off season, when we did a mild refresh to the motor, so this is the same 20B engine that we ran previously in 2021 and 2022, but was refreshed each off season. So this motor has been in this car for at least 3 years. Or at least the block has. And we've gone through some different versions, modifications, and here's where we're at now. So starting this season, we had all fresh E&J Apex seals, and we had all fresh injectors that were ethanol rated. Those were ID agency or injector dynamics injectors. We're still running the Haltech ECU tuned by Nelson S. I can drop his link or his name in description below if anybody needs tuning help. We've been running the Biosynthetic 2050, and in the rest of the drivetrain and transmission and differential, we're running the Biosyn Extra 75 weight 140. With the clutch kicks, I like a little extra protection, and we don't really run in cold weather. And then with our E98 ethanol, we've been running the Racing Rotary Premix, which blends with all race fuels, gasolines, everything, but we specifically like it because it blends with ethanol, and we run E98 high ethanol content, high octane ethanol, which comes in at about 105 octane, so it has very high knock protection. So the combination of having the engine fuel delivery system, which is 4 ethanol fuel rated fuel pumps. They are the Hellcat Walbro pumps, and the full fuel system is set up via Radium Engineering, and again controlled by our Haltech ECU. The pumps are staged so we don't shock the system, and we're running a DC power, I believe it's a 340 or 360 amp alternator, so we can run our electric power steering, electric fans, electric water pumps, data logging system, twin stage direct port nitrous system, and all of the party lights that this car has. So it has a very high amperage draw, and we have to make sure we have enough amperage that when we're injecting all of that ethanol, we're able to fire our NGK Racing spark plugs. And we're running very cold 11.5, so it's a very cold heat range, NGK Racing plugs. And we love NGK Racing because they have some of the highest quality ceramic in the world. They've been around for a long time. Part of their specialty is not only spark plugs, but it's ceramic and high quality ceramic. And if you're familiar with race engines, they're expensive. So proper maintenance, proper plugs, proper octane fuel, in our case ethanol, proper oil, proper cooling, massive oil coolers, radiators, keeping the whole setup under 220 degrees is my goal, Fahrenheit. Now, our operating temperature range usually operates between about 180 and 200. Ideally, we keep it in that range, with the end of 2 formula drift runs usually coming in at about 210 to 215 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we do have a one more time via our massive Mishimoto fans and radiator rear mount setup, separating the oil cooler and intercooler setup from the front of the car to radiator setup in the back of the car, both for weight distribution and the ability to have larger coolers and units with more fan and air movement on separate locations, so each component is getting fresh air versus dirty air or less air. All of this allows us to compete at the formula drift level, run the car at 10,000 RPM, 30 pounds of boost, 200 shot of nitrous, back to back, sometimes in one more time battles, not overheat, not run out of the things we need, cooling capacity, fuel delivery, amperage, have all played a part in keeping the engine reliable. In past years, we have had to do some work on our rotary engine, but I've really felt like generally it's never the engine's fault. Rotaries get a bad rap. We're not breaking apex seals. We're running E&J, non-breakable. And with the proper tuning, the Haltech ECU, we're not getting detonation. We've been able to manage our air intake temperatures. That's a combination of intercooler, ethanol being a cooler fuel, so we're getting a cooler charge, cooler combustion. And we're also running twin water injection sprayers, one pre-intercooler and one after the intercooler, that will help densify and cool down that boost charge as it's entering the engine. And that's set up in the ECU as to when the nitrous is on, the water injection is off. When the water injection is on, the nitrous is off. So we're not accidentally freezing our throttle plates or having any issues of the combination of water and nitrous being sprayed at the same time. And then people often ask, well, why don't you run a water methanol injection setup? And one of the reasons is we don't like injecting a fuel source that's not fully controlled and mapped. So we're able to map our nitrous setup and we're able to map our ethanol via our injectors, as where with our water injection, this is a little less calibrated if it were to slosh, amperage drop. It's not monitored the same way. So we don't run it as a fuel additive, we run it just as water. So we're densifying and cooling down the charge. Ideally, we're keeping our intake air temps as low as possible. That's obviously good for power, that's good for reliability, protects against detonation. You can detonate just because your air intake temperature gets too hot. And one of the reasons we run the air filter out through the hood, whether you like it or not, some people like the style, some people don't. I do, I'm a hot rod guy, so I like turbos, blowers, engines sticking out through the hood. It's a race car, it's a drift car, make it wild. We're going to shoot fire out the hood. We're going to stick the turbo through the hood. But the functionality of it is that we're getting fresh air, and this is separating the air filter from some of the hot air that resides in the engine bay as the fans are turning on and off. And one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to have your fan turn on, suck all the hot air out of your intercoolers, radiator, whatever you might have up front. In our case, it's intercooler and oil cooler, and have it pulled right into the turbo. And then that hot air turns into a hot charge going through your engine system. And if you suddenly have an air intake spike as you're under heavy load and heavy boost, I think that's actually a way a lot of rotary engines have been harmed. In my view, I would say you never want to see air intake temperatures over 170 degrees Fahrenheit with your rotary. Anything over 180 and you are definitely into the potential for engine failure, detonation, substantial damage. And that's what we're really trying to avoid. So again, going back to what we've learned, what our setup is doing, and it's operating within all of these values, our water temperatures, our air intake temperatures, our oil temperatures. Everything is cooled enough to keep the motor from exceeding any of its own values under all of its normal racing, hardcore performance circumstances. Having enough fuel, having enough oil capacity, having enough battery. We're actually running twin batteries in the back. So we've actually got one large one on the right side rear and one smaller one on the left side rear. And people may ask why one big, one small. I'm on the left side of the car, so we're actually counterbalancing the car a little bit with some of our allowable ballast, which is functional components like batteries, radiators, things like that. So without getting into all of the drivetrain components and the interior, obviously NRG, great safety equipment this year. I tested it out round 1. I felt fine afterwards, so thank you so much. We've got the new steering wheel coming out, or actually it's out. You can pick those up online. But without bringing the car up in the air and going over some of the undercar, I would say we had a pretty successful year in our rotary world, meaning we were able to run the same block all season long, most of the components from last year, 30 pounds of boost sustained, great setup. We felt very competitive out there. I think we can actually raise up the performance level a little bit in this setup, but we are into an area where we're running one of the largest precision turbos available in this frame size, and we're trying to not jump into a drag turbo where we're going to have more lag. We're trying to keep away from having substantial lag by running a medium-sized turbo, street port, high boost levels, and what I would consider high nitrous levels, all in the effort to sustain around 1,000 horsepower in a usable way, because it's easier to make peak horsepower with a more aggressive porting setup. We could easily throw a bridge port or peripheral port and be well over 1,000 horsepower at the wheels, but that's going to be a peakier setup that's a little less drivable, and we want to be able to compete against V8s, inline 6s, and all these other guys that are striving for the same thing, to not break parts like differentials that say they can handle 1,000 horsepower, twist axles that say they can handle 1,000 horsepower. We've had a few of those failures this year, but I won't say that it's necessarily component failure without heavy abuse. I mean, we do run into walls, we do drop clutches hard, we kick clutches, and we're running excessively low tire pressures with excessively grippy tires. So I would much rather see a rotary, that small displacement motor, my 2-liter 3-rotor, braking diffs and axles, and motors that live for years. So I think, that's a wrap on the discussion. We're going to start tearing this car down. We've got some maintenance to do. We're going to clean things up for our 2024 season, but I wanted to give a big shout out to everybody who helped out, E-Flex, Ethanol side, Mazda Tricks from all the rotary parts side, NGK, Shop Squad, NTK Sensors, Hall Tech, Renewable Lubricants, fantastic products. You guys need to check this out, whether you're rotary, supercar, industrial. They have amazing product lineup. Precision, Rap Legends, Vitor, BioPro, everybody that's made it happen this year. I'm so grateful. Exity, one clutch all season long, 1,000 horsepower, blown away, triple disc off the shelf. We'll talk about that more, but really fun year out there in Formula Drift. And as we tear the car down, we'll talk more about the individual components, but I wanted to just say thanks and highlight the fact that we drove the car into the shop. We drove the car into the trailer under its own power every round. The motor ran fantastic. And we're going to tear it down soon so we can see what it looks like inside and do a little discussion about that. So thanks a bunch. KMR. We're going to keep those rotaries going. That's a wrap.